Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Freshly Pressed. This is your host, Saurabh, and today we have Ben and Pete. Welcome to the show, Ben and Pete. How are you
Hi.
guys doing?
Pleasure to be here. We're doing pretty great, I think.
Doing
Awesome.
fantastic.
In your own words, can you both give a bit of background about yourself and bit of your history and how you guys got into comics in the first place?
I like this. I think maybe Pete's probably got a story that mine folds into because Comicer is my entry point. So, Pete, maybe you give the lead up and then we can talk about how we dovetailed.
Sure. Yeah, actually, it started about 8 or 9 years ago. I got involved in helping a friend troubleshoot and do some pre-press and publishing for his graphic novels, The Imaginary Voyages of Edgar Allan Poe with Hocus Pocus Comics, and started actually just as a fan and a backer of the first issue, and got to know Dwight and fell in love and actually started helping him do some publishing and printing stuff for the books, compiling them, and kind of rekindled my love for comics because it's one of those things you get busy with work and life, and you just kind of park a whole bunch of interests for the sake of uh, income. And really fell in love with comics again and dug out all the old ones I had, And I was telling a friend of a friend who's a chef doing some pop-up charity dinners. I was helping clean up in the kitchen and talking with him saying, hey, I just finished, after all these years, we finished all 3 volumes of this original graphic novel. I'd love for you to check it out. And he's like, hey, I have something I want you to check out. And he handed me a fistful of graphic novels and said, read them and call me later. We'll talk. And as a friend of a friend, um, he was helping to try and find a buyer uh, from Sean, who was the founder of Comicer and just no longer had the bandwidth, and changes with family and job and like circumstances with me and interests in the past, had to choose to let it go. And I was in love instantly. The quality of stories and just the incredible um, passion he had shown in bringing forth these new creators to show their own graphic novels, um, was
Yeah.
something almost unpassable. It was an opportunity. I knew that no matter what, I had to find a way to uh, make it work to kind of pick up the torch and continue Comicer and its mission of um, finding unique stories and unique individuals who want to tell new stories um, in every diversity aspect there is, because there's just not enough of that, and did not want all the creators who were represented in Comicer to just flame out and kind of be lost to the noise of comics and the situation that life had brought everyone to, and in that inflection point, knew that this was something I wanted to really do, um, and have spent the past year um, kind of in varying degrees as you try and turn a ship, like they say. try and tackle all aspects of Comicer now, and what we want it to be and where we want to take it in the future. And that's been kind of huge. It involved a rebranding over the summer, a new webpage, a new storefront, and as I'm happy to say, towards the end of this year, new stories, new writers, and there's more to come. So I'm excited to be talking with you. You've been one of the early champions of Comicer on the digital aspect with Ben and I and our uh, digital comics, and couldn't be more grateful and excited to work with you in the future, to have you share all of our books in Australia.
Thank you. No, I'm totally honored to do that because obviously I've read the books and the quality of storytelling is amazing. But when I actually got my hands onto the physical copies, it was
Woohoo!
just blew my mind. It was so good. And a few weeks ago, I did put up. You guys might have seen some pictures of me in a convention. I just put up a stall there, and um, we did end up selling a few books. It was everyone who saw these books were just raving about the quality of the print, the quality of like how they looked. Some of them actually browsed through the stories, and they just loved the art and everything else in the books. So they got picked up pretty well. Yeah, for sure.
Ah, that's so encouraging. That's fun to know. I think so many creative efforts, especially in the comics community, are made in good faith and put out into the world. And you don't know if they're going to hit with people. Like, is someone going to find this? Is someone going to like this? I think that's true of podcasts, right? I think that's true of really any creative effort in this environment. There's so much opportunity, but there's also such a sense of like, who's going to find it? Please, someone find it. And when you know that's going on, that opens the pores. That brings life into the nostrils. That's wonderful. Oh,
Absolutely. And as I like to say, you never know. You never know who's going to like it, right? So
right, right.
yeah,
You got to get it out there is the first step. So, that's so great to hear. I love that.
exactly. What about you, Ben? Tell us a bit of a history about yourself. How you found your love for comics and everything else.
Oh, it's going to be a capsule story, but essentially it starts in sixth grade when I found Wizard magazine's counterpart, Toy Fair. Wizard was this wonderful magazine that would give price guides for collectible comics, and they would also have articles about upcoming comics in there. And Toy Fair was their like toy counterpart, and they did these like photo comics in Toy Fair magazine with Mego action figures just being very silly. It was done by the team that would later go on to do Robot Chicken, right? So that kind of humor was present in magazine form. Those photo comics with goofy action figures got me hard into comics. I had read things like Calvin and Hobbes and Garfield and loved those, but it was seeing the Spider-Man action figure goofiness that made me say, oh, I want to try reading like comic pamphlets. So I got hard into Amazing Spider-Man, and that was an obsession through college, essentially. And it got to the point where I got my subscription issues mailed to my college mailbox, and I would go pick them up from the student center and sneak them in my backpack because I was like, if any girls see me reading comic books, they'll never want to talk to me, right? Like I had that nerd mentality of like, oh man, I'll never find a girlfriend now. But at the university I attended, Baylor University in Waco, Texas, their library had a couple of adult graphic novels that were written for a more mature readership, and that's where I found Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. And checking that out my freshman year, and seeing this comic thesis on how comics could be used to tell a variety of stories that I was just unaware of, totally gave validity to this genre and this medium that I had not seen before, and lit a fire under me to become a cartoonist at the campus paper. So I did that for a couple of years, and then after graduating, fiddled around, did a couple of mini comics on my own. I did an independent graphic novel for a ministry that works with juvenile inmates in Texas prisons. That was a kind of custom comic project for them. But it wasn't until thinking up the Waking Life ideas in 2015 that I tried to put together an original long form work to pitch. And that stuff was largely influenced by, as you can see behind me, Little Nemo, Winsor McCay's work from the early 1900s. So I kind of set myself a high bar for the kind of comics I wanted to make, because I said, oh, let me chase a master of the medium who's a
Mhm.
wonderful artist, and I'm okay. I'm learning. And let me tell stories about characters that he established, a century ago. But fortunately, Comiker was the home for that. They were open to the work, excited about it, and that partnership has been going for us since 2016. And we're at the point where we're now bringing out the second volume in print of the graphic novel story, and I'm pretty over the moon about it. It's really exciting.
That's amazing. Do you have any? Let's actually talk about Waking Life. Like,
Yeah.
I usually ask about what's the like how far along have you planned the story arc, but
Mhm.
let's talk about Waking Life first, and
Yeah.
what's it about? What's the world like? Without obviously the spoilers and everything, but
Sure.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
What's the log line? It's essentially an inverted Peter Pan story. You've got this character who lives in a whimsical, magical realm who enjoys human counterparts, just like Peter Pan would. In this instance, she happens to be the daughter of the king of the dreaming realm. She is his princess, and over the years, she has had a succession of human friends who have come to play with her when they sleep and dream. But eventually, those humans outgrow her. And most recently, the princess has decided that she is going to choose her own playmate. No one else is going to do that for her. Maybe that will lead to a longer term friendship. And her sights land on Robbie Boone, a human boy who has a great imagination and dreams of becoming an animator. Unfortunately, Robbie too starts to outgrow the princess as he gets into high school and decides to focus his attention on pursuing his literal dreams of animation. And deciding that she is not going to be left behind by another human, she finds a way to come to our realm, the realm of just mundane human life, to see what is so special about it. So maybe that can adjust what she and Robbie do when Robbie dreams. And her entry into our world causes some issues in their friendship that become an opportunity for growth, but it also opens the doorway for nightmares to sneak into our world and create much more problems. So the story of Waking Life is really about these two characters and their friendship getting back on the right track, but how their attempts at friendship create some larger ripple effects that they've got to contend with as well.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. So, these are two books, but have you planned more? Like, what's the arc like?
Yeah,
It's
yeah. Waking Life was initially pitched as a multi-arc story, and so where we're at in book two very much leaves things at a place that invites a follow-up. We've got the plot of the book is resolved, but there are emotional issues that are left lingering that the audience will likely want to see addressed. So we've got a third volume planned and scripted that only needs to be drawn and put together. And if the audience enjoys that and has an appetite for even more Waking Life, then we've got a complete second arc in the works that we can execute that involves a trip to the dream world. A lot of Waking Life takes place in our world and how dreams affect that, but we want to go over there at some point too. So if readers are excited about it and they want to show up for the book and demonstrate their interest in the story, then we want to take them over there for kind of an even grander, wilder adventure that gets into some of the stuff that Winsor McCay was doing in his original comics with the kind of visual surrealism in play and perspective and just that delight for the eyes.
absolutely, absolutely. It is a delight for the eyes for sure. Some of the panels actually are like, for example, this page spread, where
Glad you like that one. Yes.
I love this one, the nightmare wastes of the dreaming realm.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. There are so many of like similar page spreads, like this page
Mhm.
here. I
Oh,
just
yeah. I'm
love
glad you dig
this.
that.
Yeah.
That is a tease. That is something that will take a little time to pay off, but there is a promise in that page.
Cool. So what's new with issue two?
So issue two finds our main characters pretty well reconciled to their friendship and sees the princess character, who now goes by the name Stacy. She needs a more normal alias than princess.
Yeah.
Deciding to just be full time in the human world. And her dad's like, okay, we're going to give this a try. But if you goof this up or if there are problems, you got to come right back home. So pretty quickly, Stacy and Robbie start to realize that some supernatural stuff is in fact occurring in their world, and they've got to squash it before word gets back to Stacy's dad. He pulls the ripcord. Um, all of this nonsense is essentially a distraction from a bigger nightmare plot to assume control of the dreaming realm. The nightmares would like to prey on human dreams because they're hungry, right? And they've got a plan.
Hmm.
So there's kind of a two-front story that picks up. We're really sticking in the real world for the first couple chapters of the book, but then we start to see there's a lot of intrigue going on in the dream world as well. And that leads to a pretty intense final set of chapters where there are battles going on in both realms at the same time. And it is really up to Robbie and Stacy to make the decisions to resolve this. But in doing so, they're going to learn some things they haven't told each other that's going to create a bit of a different challenge than they expected. Not one that's external, but more internal.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the genesis of this idea in the first place of the book? How did you come up with it?
I think I was just on a big Little Nemo kick in 2015, and there was this tribute volume that came out called Dream Another Dream. It was put together by a ton of artists working in the United States and Europe, and Locust Moon Comics in Philadelphia assembled it. And I've got a copy of the book here, and I'm going to show it to you, but I don't know if the camera will do justice. This is the largest book that I own because it is this big. Okay,
Wow.
This is the bottom.
Yeah.
This is like the top corner. It's the size of ancient broadsheet newspapers. And seeing a whole bunch of different artists play with the ideas of Little Nemo really got me excited about the property again. And I read a Bill Watterson quote in kind of getting into it, where Watterson was critiquing Winsor McCay's work and saying it was visually inventive and wonderfully surrealistic, and it pushed the boundaries of comics, but he never really explored the inner lives of his characters, right? Little Nemo would wake up at the end of every strip, and there would really be no character progression. We wouldn't get to know much more about what made him tick, or what made Flip such a mischievous antagonist, or what made the princess or made Morpheus, so preoccupied with their roles. And so I was like, it would be really interesting to dig into these characters and their psyches. But at the same time, what's the hook for that? And I think the more I thought about the princess character, the more I was like, I think her story is one that really demands to be told. What is it like to be this eternally young being who keeps getting left behind? Like, how would you cope with that? And how can we show that progression? So I think with that being the mindset, it became pretty clear we can't tell the story about the princess and Nemo because she will have had to be outgrown by multiple people. We need to pick up with a contemporary playmate. So the story is, if you want to read it that way, a decades later sequel to Little Nemo in Slumberland, if you want to go that direction. And it also allows room for other artists' works to be in between that, such as Eric Schanauer and his Little Nemo comic that he did for IDW with Gabriel Rodriguez about 8 years ago. They've got a storyline where there's a new Nemo who comes in and kind of plays around. Our story doesn't negate that. It totally plays fair with that and can take place afterwards. But yeah, I wanted to add to the canon of it and see what these characters were like when we put them under a microscope and really internally challenged them, right? McKay did such a great job exploring how the world around them would morph and change. I wanted to see some internal change. And I think even when my art was not up to the standards that McKay set, my hope and my prayer is that the storytelling was. I think that's what it can hang its hat on.
Don't undersell your art. It's amazing.
And
I appreciate it.
And I will add a little to that it's interesting how life throws some coincidences in where you found a good fit. Is I have spent my entire almost like 25, 26 year career as a 3D animator. And when I started to go to art school and go through the fine art classes and everything, and then transition into, okay, this is storyboarding, character development, and animation, a big foundation of that was recognizing Winsor McCay as almost unintentionally the great grandfather of traditional cell animation.
Oh yeah.
And whether he intended that or not, he was playing around with different mediums. That was the foundation of my career path as a 3D animator and rigger. And one of the unintentional loves of Waking Life was that connection back to Winsor McCay for me. Yeah. Not directly necessarily Little Nemo, which was the most profound part, but even the person, the man, the creator of those stories, because that's more who I had connected with through my college experience. Yeah. And so also profound for me. And I will say too, Ben gives himself a hard time on the art style, and I love it because it definitely in not being overdone or art for art's sake, it does let the story carry, and it is there to support the story. But in seeing the evolution and even letting Ben noodle and noodle, panel upon panel of book 2, um, anybody who checks out the story or picks up volume 2 in the pre-order we have on Kickstarter right now, uh, will be roundly impressed with the evolution of the art style and the creation and where it's headed. And um, you really feel the growth of the story and the characters' growth
Mhm.
almost carried through the evolution of the art as well. So I
Mhm.
don't think anybody would feel uh, any any dissatisfaction or
Mhm.
um, any wanting in the experience of waking life. But
Oh no,
Ben,
yeah. A big part of book 2 was Peter giving me permission and encouragement to go back and revise some panels to bring it into line with what I can accomplish now. Because this story, has been in existence since 2016, and I've grown as an artist during that time. So I'd say where volume 1 definitely gives a picture of what my storytelling looks like. Volume 2, I think, yeah, demonstrates much more of what my current artistry is, and I think is going to be a big visual treat for those who have enjoyed the first volume too.
That's amazing. And I think your art style in general, like I even read Brody back when I was
Thank
reviewing
you.
it.
Yeah.
I think your art style is very accessible. I think people,
Mhm.
l- I would say, when people see artwork that's a little rough around the edges, they can imagine themselves uh, doing that story or that style, and I
Mhm.
feel they may not be able to, because
Mhm.
your artwork overall is fantastic, but just having that little uh, like making it a little rough around the edges
Mhm.
makes it very accessible to general people. So I feel it's fantastic that way.
I resonate with that when I see the art of people like Klaus Janson, right, or Dan Panosian or Bill Sienkiewicz, who very deliberately put a lot of life into their lines. The structure is sound. The blacks are immaculately placed, but the lines just vibrant. I think Daniel Warren Johnson is someone who exhibits this in his modern work too. He's got a vibrant, lively line, and I like how you see that people see themselves in that and feel that they can access that. It's an approachable style. It's not
Yeah.
pushing you away with sort of this like immaculate placing. And yeah, I like that. That seems right. I think that kind of goes in with my ethos as a teacher. I'm a high school teacher as well. I teach creative writing classes and just standard English literature classes. And one thing that I try to be diligent in doing is showing my students when I make mistakes or when I don't quite get it right, and inviting a curiosity into the process to say, hey, this thing isn't polished to a T. This is very much an evolving thing. As we learn, we're allowed to make some mistakes and learn from that as long as we're progressing. So let's do that together. If the art's doing that too, oh, that's perfect. That's what we want.
That's very true. In any case, I mean, comics is not considered something very highbrow by the literature people, right? then let's make it for the masses. Let's make it for everyone, who
Yeah.
can read, and I've even seen, actually. It's funny that people, you say that people can learn from it a little bit. That,
Mhm.
like, I've seen people teach themselves things from comics. I've had people who said they taught themselves to read from comics, because
Mhm.
just because they could see and visualize what was going on, they
Yeah.
were actually slowly trying to start reading from some of the comics they had early
Mhm.
in their life as well. So it's amazing that you're putting that something like that out there that kind of pushes people to go a step further.
Absolutely. I mean, I see it in my practice. There was a period of time where I taught students who were learners of English as a second language. And one of the activities we did in class was read Gene Yang's American Born Chinese, which is a book of 3 stories about immigrants who are in different contexts. And the stories slowly come together over the course of the book itself. Very accessible for students who are learning to read or practice English in an American school environment. So, I, yeah, the multiple benefits of and Gene Yang is like a multiple time National Book Award nominee. He's a MacArthur Genius Grant recipient. It's easy to make an argument for
Yeah,
his
yeah,
work
yeah.
being of merit in schools. So yeah, I keep graphic novels in my classroom. My students have independent reading time every time they come into the room. That's an opportunity for them to pull something off the shelf and get lost in it. And then to gain that confidence as they work prose back into their diet. I got to tell you, even for my boys, this is just anecdotal, but the amount of my boys who read manga, like shonen or even seinen manga, they're into stuff like One Piece, or they're into Chainsaw Man or One Punch Man or My Hero Academia or Berserk. I've got boys who are buying the leather bound Berserk copies, the $50 a pop ones. You know what I'm talking about? You could like stop an intruder with it. But they're finding this, and these are boys who like are playing basketball or like are goofing around with their friends, sending memes back and forth. They're average kids. They're not just the kid that I perceive myself to be, the nerdy dude reading comics in the corner, and God forbid a girl sees that. Like they're average kids now. So I think the masses are accessing comics in newer ways, and more frequent ways than we anticipated 10, 15 years ago. And I think sort of what you're doing, making it available digitally, especially in a marketplace that's shifting, is a huge part of that too. It gives more accessibility and discovery. It's awesome.
Thank you. I'm humble. That's amazing. So, coming to you, Pete, how do you find people like Ben, and how do you connect with great creators like Ben, and
Well,
find their stories and stuff?
fortunately, Ben came with the package and was willing to hear me out on an early Zoom call where everybody was a little freaked and unsure about how this new generation of comicer was going to go. And all I could ask was that, everybody involved in comicer before give me a chance. And so um, I was very fortunate there and very fortunate to have some amazing stories to start with. As far as finding writers now, um, I kind of want it to be as organic as possible and not me trying to force something. So over the past, year and some months now, um, I have gone to 26 Comic Cons. Uh,
Been doing
Everything
the work.
from from little ones to small ones, or like very very small ones to very large ones. LA Comic Con, not going to be out there this year, but making sure that one, we bring Comicer to the masses, um, whether that's in a booth in a mall in a country town, or big metropolitan city out in Chicago or something like that. And really, I've been kind of fortunate that the writers will find me. There's a lot of amazing independent comic artists and writers out there now, boothing at shows. Uh, I have tried to support where I can and spent an unfortunate small fortune uh, helping these new creators because I love to support indie as much as I can. But being the only, I will say, as far as I've found over most of them, the only multi-author publisher um, actually trying to coordinate and publish books for creatives. The writers have largely found me either through submissions on our page or actually approaching us at various cons. Like, hey, I saw you at this convention, 2 months ago, and happened to see you were coming around again, and just really had to talk to you. And so we've found some new writers that way. Some have reached out through emails, um, or friends of friends, like from Ben, um, just in the community saying, hey, is there anybody out there still looking to publish indie work? Because this year has gotten very difficult for the banner of indie, and I actually think that um, the iron is hot for striking now for us because of several reasons. Um, what we try and do with Comicer is very much largely a slice of life or very unique um, character journeys through these stories. And with the industry as a whole, not trying to be arrogant or talk crap about anybody doing comics, but um, like myself as a fan, there's been a lot of superhero fatigue and a lot of, um, you know, X universe fandom where it's like you can't keep up with everything unless you're keeping up with these 64 different properties and the 400 storylines contained within them, um, and everybody's kind of burning out from that and just wanting some really great, you know, isolated stories, very unique stories, and so. Like I've told Ben numerous times when I've been a little stressed or worried about stuff going on, that I went in on Comicer on faith, and I'm going to continue to just trust the process and trust the journey, that we're all trying to put these stories out there for the greater whole. And I love these stories, so I have told everyone I'm dedicated to continuing to share them out there as much as I can and doing as much as I can as quickly as I can to tick all the boxes so that it's everywhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I feel it's not just the superhero fatigue. It's just uh, the need to. There's a constant need to get something new, some sort of new story, or some sort of a new feel to the things as well, right? Like if even if you see, like if you see what's happened to streaming services, there's so much new content on there. Like there's like new TV shows popping up here and there all the time. And like, for example, I see like a catalog of Apple TV, or say Netflix or something like that. Like the stories that were not even possible like 20 years ago, they are being made today,
Mm-hmm.
so um, and a lot of them are from these writers and creators who would never have a voice before, because they were just not enough budgets, or they were just not enough, like viewership. It's just how the distribution has changed, and all of that has, like, with the change in shift of how internet has democratized all of these things. Like, for example, Kickstarter, right? It's a great platform. It has given voice to hundreds and hundreds of indie creators, even in comics, to actually come out and share their work with the rest of the world. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, Pete, correctly, the iron's hot. It's
Yeah.
a good time to actually, yeah.
I will add to that I think too, especially with bringing up the Netflix and the streaming and all of that, I think that um, where I'm really trying to, hold my confidence close that I am doing the right thing is when you look at like the movie and TV industry. I was looking at some stats that in the 1980s, uh, sequels and stories that were being retold as a sequel or a reboot was about 10 to 15%.
Hmm.
And currently on the market right now, the reboots and new remakes are about 80%. Everyone has this fear to trust new stories that they have the ability to hit. But finding these writers like Ben who want to tell this timeless tale where the story will endure regardless. That's what the great writers like Heinlein and Frank Herbert and Dune and and Isaac Asimov, or these people who are telling fantastical tales. Hundreds of years later, their books are still relevant today, and that's because they knew that their stories and the story can carry through time, because this is the human experience. It's not pop culture, it's not trendy. This is what everyone has to deal with,
Mhm.
whether it's loneliness or nightmares or friendship. Um, these are just universal struggles, and they span age and race and any type of cultural differences. Everyone can relate to that.
Mm.
Absolutely. I think with your thing, I find this I draw a parallel for Comiker with something similar to I don't know if you know A24 Studios, which is
Whoa, that is a
yeah,
compliment. That is high
yeah.
praise. That is high praise. Ooh.
You know why? Because you see the work of A24. It's by really these people who want to tell authentic stories, and
Mhm.
like these really personal and genuine stories that are that may be high concept or something like that, but they are so stripped down that you can actually relate to them at a human level.
Mhm.
They're not high budget movies, but the quality of those movies are fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it just gives the voice in the hands of an independent creator who just goes in and does what they want with it. So,
Mm.
and every now and then you'll create something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, right?
Which would not be a conventional Hollywood release, but set things on fire, right? Like
Exactly,
swept Oscars. Just giving the
exactly.
Daniels a chance. When their previous movie was about a stranded man and the corpse that is very useful at getting him out of that situation, just absurd stuff, surreal stuff, but it works.
Yep,
Yeah,
and full of fart
absolutely.
jokes.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a secret sauce of all these things, especially if we're thinking about like the A24 world. At the end of the day, I think a lot of what makes their work successful is the best of it foregrounds character, because we want to see believable people in relatable and exceptional circumstances. If I can believe in a character and invest in that character and they seem cohesive and complex, I'm going to want to follow that story. And then on top of that, we build a compelling plot. On top of that, we add spectacle or fart jokes or an unusual approach. But if at the core of it, we're servicing a character. And when I think about some of the comicer books that have persisted, I think about things like Tyler Ellis's Chimera, which is a very character driven story about these kind of nomads who are out attempting to do a bounty and how they've got motivations they don't all completely understand about their own selves. I think about Kate Sharon's Casebook of Rabbit Black and about a very, unusual and kind of like misanthropic centralized character who has to investigate their own death. You're compelled to follow that story. I
Yeah.
think David Ocampo and Chris Anderson with Lost Angels, they are really digging into
Oh
those
yeah.
depths and making relatable characters. And so all of those stories allow for different settings and a little bit of magical realism here, a little bit of science fiction there, but the characters are driving it. And that's why people love DC and Marvel properties. We can come back to things like, oh, hey, Joker, did this terrible thing to Jason Todd, or hey, do you remember when Doomsday killed Superman? And those are fine. But I think what we remember more are the character moments like where in All Star Superman takes time out of his adventures to stop and talk to a woman on a rooftop who is feeling suicidal. And he tells her, your therapist really was held up. And
Mm.
it's not as bad as you think. And he embraces her. And that's the moment where we say, oh, that character, I get what they're doing. I get what they're for, right? Like that's why those characters live so well for us. That's why when we watch an MCU film and Steve Rogers gets up and says, I can do this all day, our heart beats a little bit faster, right? It's not for the plot explosions. It's the fact that this dude is going to stand up to bullies no matter what. And he did it when it wasn't convenient. And now that he's a superpower dude, we're on board with that. We think that's good. Now, pardon me for just a second. I'll let Peter examine some of the profundity on that.
Yeah, and to that point, I think I was having a discussion with a friend about the comic book characters and literary characters, and um, why we try and find the important books is because when you think back to your favorite characters, whether in comics or stories, um, the thing that I finally realized, and it was well into college before I realized this, when you read a story, everybody's like, "Oh, this is just fiction. This is, it's a story." Well, no. When I read Lord of the Rings, that was like 2 months of living with these people.
Mm-hmm.
They were real in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So when something tragic happens to them, you feel loss, or you feel the pain or the joy of them succeeding in something. And that's uh, where I think Comicker's catalog so far really kind of resonates, is that these are characters where once you spend time with them in their world, they mean something to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, and I think I've seen enough evidence to that as well. So yeah, kudos to you both. I think you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
um, awesome. We'll quickly get into the rewards. Are there like any? Can you get into the rewards a little bit?
We have made the book like very affordable for people who want to read it, and I think that is awesome. Like Pete has taken pains to say, if you want to get these, there are ways to do that that are very friendly to your wallet. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've really tried to encourage people who don't have one or the other to grab a bundle,
Mm-hmm.
because I really did try and make that the most value for your dollar, where uh, there's lots of discounts to go around, um, for the digital, for the print, or you can go all in on the digital and the print, uh, all in on the comic or printed stories that exist currently. And actually, a lot of the comic or digital artists I've been working with over the past year, were working to curate and print their graphic novels as well. So there's going to be a lot more very quick, as well as brand new writers and artists. Um, but really, the coolest stuff on there as well is the one and only Ben Humeniuk here has offered graciously to do commissions,
Woo!
which are very cool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the little thumbnails don't do it justice, but
Yeah.
um,
I keep telling myself I need to do like a social media thread of like, here are some convention pieces I've done in recent history. Y'all, come get one, right? Like, let me do
Yeah.
this for you.
Yeah.
I have found it's tough selling books at conventions sometimes because that's a new thing to try out, and there's a barrier to entry. You've got to pay some money for that. But offering commissions where someone can approach and say, "Oh, I'm really interested in you drawing a zombie for me for this price that you're quoting," that gives you a chance to introduce someone to your art style and then to introduce them to the stories you have to tell. So I think those who are able to draw commissions have great fortune in the convention scene, as opposed to those who are simply selling books. I think you've got to be very creative and persistent. And those who do well know how to do that well. But bottom line is, I think I can do some pretty good commissions. And I think the people who have been my clients feel that way too. So I'm excited to have that as an opportunity for those who want to back the campaign and maybe check out the stories, but definitely get some great art. Hopefully you'll find the stories are absolutely worth your time in the process.
They sure are. Like for a book that's close to 200 pages. How long is the is book two? How many pages?
Yeah, it's just a touch more. I think book one clocks in at 186 pages, book two in somewhere around 203 pages.
Yeah, so for a 203-page book, a $15 price tag is actually quite affordable. It's actually quite, and the quality of the cover, the gloss that Pete loves to put in, like all the extra effort that goes into the production of the book, it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely worth that cover price for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. It's handsome.
So
I say that because Pete worked on volume two and getting the gloss and stuff down. It's a handsome book, right? I won't take the credit for it. That's arrogant. I will say Pete did a good job.
that's cool. Awesome. But we're coming close to time. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show, both of you. I really appreciate your time today, and all the best on rest of the campaign. Great to know that it's already fully funded, and let's see
Yeah.
if we can hit some
yeah.
stretch goals in the next 4 days.
hopefully hit 40 backers. But I will say too, for the campaign rewards, um, Ben is doing a 1-day con December 2nd in Houston, and for the backers, I am driving from Minnesota down to Texas
That's a
to
long
meet up
way.
with him. To it's a little over 17 hours
Yeah.
driving.
Wow.
Um,
It's a big country, and that's a lot of terrain to cover.
yeah, the
Wow.
joke for with my British friends is like you don't give distances in mileage or kilometers. You give distances in time. Like
That's true. That is so true. So Pete is literally going the extra mile for people who are interested in this comic because he's putting those miles in his
we're
vehicle.
we're getting you books signed. Maybe
That's right.
maybe if Ben's feeling a little frisky, some sketches in there as well.
Oh,
And
I'm feeling frisky. Let's do it. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go. We'll get it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, get on it, people. Get the I'll link the campaign in the description, and yeah, let's hit some stretch goals. So thank you for coming
Oh,
on
yeah.
the show, both of you again. Really appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your campaign, and yeah, we'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thanks,
thank
Rip.
you.
Appreciate it, man.
Can't say thanks enough for your support and comics as well. So appreciate that.
Seriously.
Awesome. Thank you.